women have been given certain prescribed roles from the day of their birth, role which for a long time in our society has said that you must be a typist or secretary or a receptionist, that hopefully one day you'll get married and have children, so you carry on. It's the same thing that's been applicable to blacks. Black couldn't think of being a lawyer or a surgeon or what have you, 30, 35 years ago without people raising an eyebrow. But what has happened now is that women are beginning to demand in this society that they be judged on the basis of their merits and their talents, not on whether you wear a dress or a pair of pants.
My name is Catherine Graham. I'm the president of the Washington Post Company, which has 3 divisions. It owns the Washington Post paper, it owns Newsweek magazine, and it has a television division with 4 television stations and 2 radio stations. We have a news service with the Los Angeles Times, which is distributed to 300 papers here and around the world. We have Newsweek International. We own 49% of a paper mill in Canada. I am also publisher of the Washington Post, so that I have a line job in one of our divisions.
Hello, I'm Helen Reddy. I don't really remember the first time that I ever set foot on stage because both my parents were in show business, and I guess I must have made a lot of noise in the dressing room because they brought me out with them when I was about 4 years old. And I worked in theater and also doing radio because my parents were very big in radio when radio was very big. I did that almost exclusively until I was about 17. And it was then that TV first came to Australia, where I lived. And I had my first experience in television, and I was in a series for a couple of years. But I'd never had any recording experience whatsoever until I came to the United States. And it was very, shall we say, amusing to achieve success in the medium that I'd had the least experience in.
I'm LaDonna Harris, president of Americans for Indian Opportunity. What we attempt to do in Americans for Indian Opportunity is to provide technical assistance to tribes, organizations, and communities of Indian people throughout the country.
My name is Virginia Apgar. I have a very interesting position with March of Dimes as Vice President for Medical Affairs. We're working entirely in the field of birth defects. After Mount Holyoke College, I went through PNS, surgical residency internship, and anesthesia training with Professor of Anesthesiology there. At present, I hold a position as clinical professor of pediatrics, and at the moment, I'm at Johns Hopkins getting refueled for the year in genetics and epidemiology.
Transfusions?
It depends entirely how big the child is. I've talked to Roman about this.
Yes, this little girl has to be affected.
I started off expecting to be a surgeon, but then it was in the Depression. I found that no woman I knew in New York City was a surgeon who made her living at it. She either had money or had a husband with money. And since I borrowed all the money from medical school, I changed fields completely to anesthesiology, which was very new then.
Being a woman and running an organization like this, there are some problems. I have to stop and think and consider the role or the situation that I'm in. I have to be more diplomatic at particular times, different times, and have to think it through. Would it be would it be better for the success of what we're doing if a man played the leadership role?
I would have said 2 or 3 years ago, before the women's issues had arisen so much to the fore as they have now, I would have said then that I never felt discrimination. Obviously, if you're the #1 woman in an organization, I mean the #1 person in an organization, it's hard to discriminate against you. But there are other situations in which you feel it when you're on an equal basis with men in a committee meeting or something like that, in which you feel they don't have much regard for your view. I've also become aware in the last 2 or 3 years that a lot of men really don't like working for a woman.
I'm a sort of a poet, but that means a lot of different things to me. That means that not only do you write something called poetry, but that you live something called life.
Oh, I love it.
I like college kids because I think it's difficult these days to be in college. I think that the task of the 70s is very different from the task of the 50s or the 40s or the 60s, that we don't have the mass movements that we once had. You know, we have a personal situation, and the community and the nation are requiring personal decisions. Young college men had to decide whether or not they chose to fight a war in Vietnam. Young black students had to decide whether or not they would choose to hack it at a white university and get the skills that are necessary to bring back to the community. These are lonely decisions.
Like a lot of questions, the answer to whether we are still discriminating against minorities and women is yes and no. I think the chances have just opened up immeasurably, and I think in all of our efforts to do more, we don't keep enough track of the progress we've made, which is just fantastic. On the other hand, we're not doing enough, and there is no question about it. In the sensitive areas of employment and equal opportunity in the sense of upward mobility, and on the high levels of business, that there certainly are not an adequate representation of women or of blacks. I regard this both as a woman, and as a woman I think we all ought to be doing better, and as an employer I think we ought to be doing better. But as an employer I also see the very, very great difficulty.
There is plenty of room for women in scientific pursuits. We need many, many more in the field than are in it at present. And I don't think it makes a bit of difference whether it's a man or a woman, if he or she has the interest and the background to do it. There are about 10 times as many applicants now for medical schools as there have been in the past for the positions available. So there's a lot of competition. I've just urged that gals do the very best they can in their preparatory education in college, because it does help a lot.
I don't know that I've ever faced discrimination as a woman as yet. And I think that's because the racial situation in America makes most black women face discrimination as black.
I don't think that the movement is as relevant to the needs of poor women and minority women as it should be, probably because the movement is mostly composed of middle-class women who are naturally concerned with the issues that affect their lives.
I mean, when we look at the history of slavery, we have a whole situation where no one cared if you were a woman or not. You had to get out into the field. Or after freedom, no one cared whether you were a woman or not. You had to work to support your family. So black women, that's one of the problems that Women's Lib has, I think, in relating to the black woman. They look at themselves as women, but we've had to look at ourselves as black.
Work with on the design of an internship.
I think it's my Indianness that slowed me down, not because I'm an Indian, but because how people saw me as an Indian, and caused me to withdraw. And it's happened to so many people. It's made us draw into ourselves. But we do this as a protective mechanism, you know, to protect ourselves from any kind of personal mental cruelty. And it became something, as I developed that protective mechanism, something that I had to overcome when I became older. You know, we have the highest suicide rate in the country, 4 times the national average. And I think a lot of that comes from that, stemming from that feeling and carried to the ultimate of self-hate. Our kids are being taught that they are poor, that they are deprived. I think that it's unfair, because I was, I'm sure, as poor as anybody else is poor today, but nobody taught that to me. Nobody taught deprivation to me. Nobody convinced me that I did not have the tools necessary to survive in the world. Everybody said, well, you know, so you have an outdoor toilet. Everybody's got an outdoor toilet, you know. So what? You still have to achieve. And I regret the way that our youngsters are being taught that they cannot achieve because of an external situation and therefore should not. It's made junkies out of half the community. I'm concerned about our youngsters because we are preaching despair, and I resent it.
The worst handicap women work under is the self-inflicted one, that if you've grown up thinking of yourself as a second-class citizen, that you tend always to put yourself down. I think that the younger generation of women, they have the choice, and that there are no horizons too broad or too high for them to think along. And I think that the people who've grown up thinking that they can do anything or nothing are the ones who won't have the handicap that my generation had.
The question often comes up whether a woman doctor can have a family and be a physician too. There are a number of specialties which do not demand around-the-clock attention, such as dermatology, pathology, radiology. There are many, many successful combinations. It also helps to have an understanding husband.
Our parents' generation, for example, a woman's goal in life was to get married and have children and make a professional career out of that. And I know when I was growing up, I was always taught that I could have my choice. I could have a successful career or I could be a good wife and mother. And the most amazing freedom for me was to be able to have both and to be able to do a good job at both.
Wouldn't trade me for the moon inside a jar, 'cause you made me both a sun and a star, and in our twilight we will recall that the highlight for us in this world was having dreams come true. I'm so comfortable with you. Jeff, you made my dreams come true. Here's a love song just for you.
And I think a lot of young women now who are leaving high school and going into college are really thinking seriously about a career, about doing something with their lives other than just marrying and having children.
I mean, you're a student like anybody else, man. And what you should do is graduate, because whether you graduate from the top of your class or the bottom of your class, but you one thing, you graduated. And that's all that's going to matter, you know. And when you get out into the world, you're either going to do something or you ain't going to do nothing, right? And that's up to you. That has nothing to do with the degree. But if you're going to sit here for 4 years, you ought to get that sheepskin.
They're looking for what is happening in the world. Am I unusual? Is it odd that I have these feelings, that I would like to try this, that, or the other? And I think that one of my responsibilities is to give support to what I know is not an easy situation, to say, well, yes, you know, we do need doctors, and it will be 8 years, but it will be nice if you are a doctor.
When I was a little girl, I wanted very badly to be a missionary. And, of course, I was turned off by the bias that I knew existed against women in the church. And I think I was destined to go into show business anyway. But I feel in a sense that I am doing missionary work, that I have a goal to try to uplift women, to try to give them a little confidence in themselves. And that's what the power is for. I really don't think that you should achieve success just to make yourself a big shot. I think you have to take the power and use it and try to help other people with it.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore, and I know too much to go back and pretend, 'cause I've heard it all before, and I've been down there on the floor, and no one's ever gonna keep me down again. Oh, yes, I'm wise, but it's wisdom for the pain. Yes, I paid the price, but look how much I gained. If I have to, I can face anything at all. I am strong, I am invincible, I am
If our Creator intended us to be only mothers, I think we would be fertile more than just a third of our lives, and that other 2/3 should not be unproductive, not when there's so much talent.
But to me, poetry is a living entity, which means that it must expand its wings. You know, it must fly.
I used to dream militant dreams of taking over America to show these white folks how it should be done. I used to dream radical dreams of blowing everyone away with my perceptive powers of correct analysis. I even used to think I'd be the one to stop the riot and negotiate the peace. Then I awoke and dug that if I dreamed natural dreams of being a natural woman, doing what a woman does when she is natural, I would have a revolution.
When you're 20, you want to run out and change the whole world. When you're 30, you realize that you have a monumental task just to change yourself, just to change your own immediate environment.
Women want to be productive citizens, women particularly who have to take care of their families. They don't want public assistance. They want to be able to go out and work, be able to pay their taxes so that they can be considered productive citizens. But if you don't have child care centers, you have all of these women who have to support their families going back on the public assistance rolls. Thousands of women in America are not working because of the need for additional luxuries. They're working because it's a necessity. And if we believe in our children, and we want to give our children the best, since we say we're a child-oriented society, we should develop the kind of national child care centers in this country that's desperately needed.
More women in office is going to make the ultimate difference.
It's a very difficult question to answer, whether more women in high up in the media and high up in politics would make a difference. I have a feeling it would, but not in the way that people think. On the paper, the issue arose very strongly in connection with what the women called originating editors. They complained to the editors that there weren't enough women in originating jobs, and those are the ones who think up the stories and make the input. As an example, they claimed that the men didn't cover the abortion bill in Congress until it almost came to the vote, but that they didn't realize the importance of that issue to women. And so in that sense, I think women high up in the media make a difference. But whether we'd have a better world or a more peaceful world, I tend to doubt.
A woman is much more apt to be concerned with the things that have to do with the conservation and preservation of the most important resources that any nation ever has, and that's its human beings.
We'll see an end to the imbalance that we have. The preoccupation with war, for example, this whole my bomb is bigger than your bomb philosophy comes down to a very basic locker room rivalry. I think the neglect that we have in child care, in education, in health care, and caring for the elderly, those kind of things, particularly the environment, for example, these are all areas that women have traditionally concerned themselves with. And I think the absence of women in government is one of the reasons why these parts of our system have just been allowed to rot.
I'm really concerned about the quality of life. I don't know, I have a little nephew who's 14, and I just don't know what's in his head. Because I can't even tell him words like, honor and duty, you know what I mean? Because he doesn't know what I'm talking about. What was wrong? What is wrong with you? I told him once that I wanted him to be the first black governor of Ohio. And his immediate reaction was, well, shoot, I don't want to get killed. That's what he said, and that's kind of sad to me that, something like service, because I believe in service. I think that for black people, it's going to be the only thing that's going to get us over.
I don't think schools are preparing boys and girls equally to face the real world. I think they're still, I've always found that educational institutions are really one of the hardest institutions to change.
I have had the chance to observe my daughter's education because she's been educated here, and I think that there's a tremendous amount of sexual discrimination applied. The fact that girls line up in one line and boys in another. The report card that we get sent home says he is failing to do his best, or things like that. It's always he. Or the fact that boys and girls don't get a chance to compete together in sports. The fact that in many schools, girls are denied the chance to learn woodcraft or leathercraft, and boys are denied the opportunity to learn how to cook or sew or something which some of them may have a natural talent for.
I think individual girls like my 12-year-old daughter will help change the system as she's taught to kind of speak out in not so much in antagonistic way, but in disagreement to what she's hearing. And I think we have to teach our daughters and our children to do that in many regards. both toward racism and sexism.
No, because folks run them games on you. If you wasn't capable, you wouldn't be here. Folks are not nice. There's nobody on earth that does a favor to anybody. I mean, you check it out. Folks always telling you they're doing favors, but they're not doing favors. Folks don't have time to do favors. There's so many capable people.
Many of us have been damaged by sexism. I think the women's movement will bring about a more humanist movement when we start looking at each other as human beings instead of as men and women.
The feminist movement has become much more of a grassroots movement. 3 years ago, people thought of women's liberation as 3 screaming freaks in New York City. Now, a housewife in Indiana or a secretary in Illinois now feel that the issues of women's liberation are things that affect their lives. They're still afraid of the term. They say, well, I don't believe in women's liberation, but I do believe in equal pay for equal work. I do believe there should be child care centers. They go on to list all the goals of women's liberation, but because of the unfavorable image that the media have given feminists, they tend to shy away from the term women's liberation.
It is possibly a hangover from biblical days when women were considered to be part of property of a man. And I think it's going to take some time for this to be overcome, but I think it's on its way.
I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have a woman president for the next 20 to 25 years, particularly if the women continue to move in the direction in which they're moving now in this country by constantly fighting for recognition on the basis of their talents and their abilities, and not on the basis of their sex. And they're making the gentlemen in this country begin to realize that ultimately all discrimination, whether it's anti-woman or anti-black, all discrimination is anti-human.
The thing that's helped me most get through certain periods of my life is something I think I obtained as an Indian person and from my mother's people, is the appreciation for people who are different and what they believed in. For instance, my grandfather was a peyote man, and my grandmother was a Christian. And they respected each other's religion, and neither one interfered with the other. And I think to appreciate people's difference and respect it makes you more flexible and makes you really benefit from knowing all kinds of people and not to fear them because they're different.
I think that everybody's entitled to his own lifestyle, you know. People always say, well, how come you didn't get married? Because I didn't want to. That's how come I didn't get married. And I didn't have to. And I didn't. That's how come, because I'm myself.
I think that that's the role that Native Americans are going to play in this country today, to help people in the United States to give up the melting pot myth. I think the greatest challenge is to bring about change. I believe in an organization. I believe organizing on a community level, because group pressure is what makes people respond. That you can bring about change if you organize around issues. And perhaps the struggle itself is worth the effort, whether you ever completely open all the doors or not.
Because I have chosen the lifestyle that I lead, and it suits my personality. I don't try to sell it. You understand? I wouldn't try to push it off on anybody, but it suits me. And I think that that's all a lifestyle should do. It should suit you. It's your life.
Cause it only serves to make me more determined to achieve my final goal. And I come back even stronger, not a novice.